Welcome back to another game review. For this video, I'm going to be reviewing inFAMOUS Second Son, a game that's been sitting on my backlog for years. How has the game aged since it came out in March of 2014? Is it still worth playing today? Or should you go search for a copy in the bargain bin? Stick around to find out. First, I'll be giving a short synopsis of the game, then go into my review with some minor spoilers. Timestamps will be provided in the description below. The first inFAMOUS game was released on the PS3 in 2009, and a sequel, inFAMOUS 2, came out also for the PS3 in 2011. inFAMOUS was one of the first games I played that emphasized player choice, as they got to control the protagonist on their path of becoming a superhero or a supervillain. The main character in those first two games was Cole McGrath, who was an ordinary bike messenger tasked with carrying a package that explodes, and instead of the blast killing him, he gains electricity-based superpowers instead. Because, you know. I don't remember those games too well, so my review of Second Son will be for those who haven't played the first two games. In Second Son, you play as Delson. Yeah, not Nelson, but Delson Rowe, who is a young man, probably in his early 20s, but feels more like a rebelling teenager. The game starts with him tagging a billboard of his brother, who is a police officer in a small coastal town with Native American heritage, nearby the larger city of Seattle, Washington. Then by chance, a transport vehicle carrying 3 conduits, the name for people with superpowers, flips over and the prisoners escape right in front of the two brothers.
Ready? What? Truck.
Delson comes in contact with one of these conduits and somehow receives his flame powers. Following him to figure out what is happening, they run into the main villain of the story, who is a red-headed woman named Augustine, who is the head of the DUP, or Department of Unified Protection, who is a conduit herself and is in charge of hunting down and locking up other conduits in a special prison. Augustine kills and hospitalizes many of Delson's tribe with her superpower, and the only way to rescue his remaining loved ones are to confront Augustine and take her powers, which supposedly can heal the injuries she caused. I played through inFAMOUS Second Son's story 2 times, getting 100% of the achievements, which took about 25 hours total. Overall, I was actually disappointed, and I was a little annoyed how the back cover used to sell the game has the E3 awards from major gaming sites like IGN and Destructoid. Even though this game was the fastest selling inFAMOUS game in the franchise, and has a majority of positive reviews, the game doesn't age well, and if released today, would have been met with more negative criticism. Second Son took the name of the previous inFAMOUS games to sell this reboot to new and old fans. I'll explain where Second Son failed and why we haven't seen more sequels for a franchise that could have rivaled the popularity of games like Uncharted.
I did this. And I gotta fix it.
At its very core, what makes the game unique is the ability to choose your own path, to become a hero, or inFAMOUS. The main problem I have with Second Son was how these choices were never ambiguous, making every action clearly setting you on the path of either a hero or villain. It's always clear what is good or evil, shown in blue or red, respectively. There is no ambiguity. On top of that, once you make the choice, you feel restricted as opposing choices are blocked off and no longer accessible. At certain points in the game, I was wondering why even have the choice show up if you can't select it anyway. The game is short, about 10 hours the first playthrough, so the developers probably intended players to see the choice and be aware of the alternate path for the next time you make this decision. I would say that more than 90% of the game is the same whether you are heroic or evil. Some dialogue choices between characters change, some abilities are restricted, and there are 2 endings, but I feel there could have been a lot more diversity.
Just hang out for a second. Can I talk to you? I thought you were all about rule of law and not locking up people without due process.
Hey, normally, that's what I do.
Oh, what, so it just gets thrown out the window whenever it's convenient for you? Is that it? Just put a red wig and an old trench coat on, you start calling you Augustine.
Maybe next Halloween.
Cool. So, Game Boy and I over there are gonna have a little conversation conduit to conduit. No normals allowed?
Fine. If you need me, be right outside.
Okay. Oh, and thank you for all your help. Couldn't have done it without you. Oh, wait, I already did.
I know. It wasn't funny the first time.
So, what do you say, Eugene? You, me, a couple of conduits hit the town. You show me some of your new video tricks. I show you how to pick up some girls. Maybe rescue some of our marked brethren.
I don't think so. I still feel safer in here.
Come on, man. You keep staying down here and playing angels and demons. You're never gonna get laid. Listen, man. It's your life. But there is a way for us to live out there in the real world. But it's up to us to make it happen. You think about that. You let me know, okay? So, Eugene, my brother, what do you say? You and me, a couple conduits, we hit the town, you teach me some of those video tricks, I teach you how to pick up girls, and we take our power to the people.
Well, I'd like to find the Russians that were picking on the suspected conduits and kicking the shit out of them for a change.
Dude, I want to party with you. The date then, yeah?
Right.
We will rise up, and we will teach them to accept us, even if it kills them.
It feels like lazy game design when characters have the exact same dialogue just after a significant good or bad decision. For any game so far, I felt the more I played the game, the more I discovered and appreciated about it. This game is not like that at all. There is only one extra that adds to the story, listening to audio logs that reveal some backstory about the main villain and the DUP.
The crazier this city gets, the more it just proves Augustine was right. Conduits and humans can't live together.
While it was nice to hear the controller being used for sound, and utilizing the touchpad, the motion controls where you mimic a spray can for graffiti art did not work for me most of the time and was just frustrating. The side quests, which has you exploring the whole city, feels tedious and unsatisfying. Not worth doing unless you want the trophies or achievements. If you're a hero, you'll mostly be picking up random people off the ground for good karma, or just killing random people like musicians and sign twirlers if you're going for infamous.
I want a Delta bottle.
I could have also made a whole video about how having a terrible main character like Delson can ruin your game regardless of other positive qualities. Not even the talented voice actor Troy Baker could make Delson a likable protagonist. The sarcastic, hipster, misunderstood rebel tries to bring fresh air to a series that no one asked for. Cole, from the previous Infamous games, didn't have much of a personality, but it was still better than Delson. Other than the character Fetch, who is like Delson's female version, but with a better backstory, none of the other characters were memorable, and the story of people with superpowers being treated as outcasts or persecuted have been done to death. The game would have been better if it took out the heroic options and only had one path, because I feel the infamous options, regardless of how little it changed things, ultimately had a more satisfying dialogue and conclusion. This could even set up for a possible sequel, with Delson being the antagonist in the next game. The reason I dislike Delson so much, especially if you treat him as a hero, is that the whole plot of the story is a result of his actions and his need to be a smartass.
You see, we are engaged in a life and death war with these bioterrorists, and it's my job to do whatever it takes to ensure that we win that war.
What? It's kind of funny because aren't you a bioterrorist too? Okay.
Yes, I am. Sometimes you have to fight fire with fire. And it's clear now that you're not a coward, which means there's something that you're not telling me.
What are you doing? You can't do this, you crazy! I've got rights!
And I have the legal authority to suspend those rights whenever I feel it's necessary, like now, for instance.
It would have been fitting if he learned to be a better person with the powers he developed, but he ends up being unlikable because he still acts the same way he did at the beginning, only at the end he has a bigger ego, knowing that he basically has the strongest power of any conduit. You would think that he would respect his older brother, who actually puts himself in harm's way to protect others as a police officer for a small town, like a real hero. But no, Delsin just acts like an entitled a-hole. There are some positives of the game I'd like to highlight, mostly which are taken from previous Infamous games. The action is fast-paced, and you can fire your projectiles as you run, jump, and climb up buildings. You'll be running across rooftops, seeing the entire city as you go from one corner of the map to another. You can level up your powers, and some battles highlight the ability to switch between different powers you attain in the same fight. However, you'll most likely pick a favorite power and stick with that most of the game. Even though they look different, they all have a light projectile, melee attack, heavy projectile, and mobility skill. The open world is large and fun to explore, but it is a shame that you are essentially blocked from powering up your character until you progress further into the game, again restricting your choices to play the game the way you want. Even the enjoyable, fast-paced firefights are diminished by annoying design choices. During combat, you don't have a life meter, so you can't tell how close to death you are. Like other games, you just need to avoid taking damage for a few seconds for your life to regenerate. But in this game, your screen starts to turn gray and the volume starts to get muffled, simulating tunnel vision if you are low on health. Adding to the fact that I had to play the game on the brightest of settings because using light effects seems to make everything around you much darker, so when you are low on health it gets hard to see and hear the enemies around you, leading to many unfair deaths. Even though the game looks good, plays well, and has good voice actors, I'm left with a negative impression of the game and cannot recommend it to others. Ultimately, the reason it doesn't live up to its vision is because it fails to innovate from the two previous games that came before it. It feels the game played it way too safe, with combat feeling way too familiar, an antiquated morality system, and generic story. I'm sure if I played the game when it was released, it may have still been fresh, but with the quality of games coming out in 2018, this is a title that should be left in the bargain bin or retired from your backlog. With that in mind, I would give Infamous Second Son a slightly better than average score of a C+. Truly great games are timeless, but Second Son does not hold up today. I hope you guys liked this video. I have the full written review of the game on my website going into more detail of E3 awards and if that's any indication of a good game. Thanks as always for watching, and if you made it this far, let me know what your most disappointing game of E3 turned out to be. And for those going back to school, good luck and have fun.